This is Access Tech Live.
Kate Sonka is the Executive Director of Teach Access, a nonprofit organization working to close the gap on understanding the principles of accessible design and development to ensure technologies are born accessible. Now, she sat on a panel at CES this year called The Future of Inclusive Design, along with the head of accessibility for Verizon Wireless, Fred Moltz. Hot off their panel, these two professionals took the time to join us at CES after we stopped rolling to talk to us about accessibility education at all levels. Here's that conversation. Now, you two have something interesting in common for this year's CES, which is that you're on the same panel together. Was that a coincidence?
It was not. It was, well,
Yes and no.
Yes and no. Yeah, I mean, of course, we have no control over what they choose, but we have had a long-standing collaboration. The work that we do at Teach Access, we can't do it without partnerships with industry, with educational institutions, as well as other disability advocacy groups. And so it makes sense for us. It makes sense to be able to share the stage with Fred and his team.
Yeah, and Teach Access is just a phenomenal partner. We are so happy to partner with them daily. I mean, they really do a great job, and we're really excited to be partners with them. So
It's true.
And that panel I'm talking about is called The Future of Inclusive Design, which I want to get into more details, but I think we need to give a little bit of a backstory for our audience out there. So ladies first, Kate, if you can first tell us about Teach Access, what your mission is and what you do with Teach Access.
Yeah, happy to. So we are a nonprofit organization. We're based in the United States, although we have, partnerships and collaborations extending outside of the U.S., but our core mission is to support higher ed faculty and instructors to teach about accessibility and disability to current students, with the intention that as they graduate and they go to work for Verizon or any of the companies that are here or beyond, they know to include accessibility from the beginning of a design phase, process, ideation, include it along the way. One of the sort of common things that we like to say is that we are about breadth more than depth. And so what I mean by that is we're really looking for large-scale introduction of these topics for students so that there's a lot of people who know a little bit about accessibility out there. We'll always need experts like Fred, like you all. But if everybody knew a little bit, imagine how that would really move the needle on creating products that are accessible from the beginning. So we have a whole bunch of programs, a bunch of different initiatives to support faculty to be able to teach about these topics, as well as programs to support students directly so that they can learn about what these topics are and find ways to incorporate that into what they're doing.
Now, Fred, I think unless you're under a rock, I don't think you would not know what Verizon is as a company. However, I think the association from at least our audience, or our audience watches the show, would be Verizon is a wireless carrier. But there's so much more to Verizon, and I'm curious to know how your role as a chief accessibility officer and someone who's been at Verizon for quite some time, not that that's a bad thing, tell us about Verizon when it comes to accessibility and what you do there.
So Verizon, it's a great company, and the fact that we have invested in accessibility, we continue to invest in accessibility, is what really excites me. It's what really keeps me motivated, keeps my team motivated each and every day. We are looking at everything from an accessibility perspective, whether that is customer-focused tools, platforms, product services, or it's for our own internal employees, because that's just as equally important. We want to bring in the right talent, retain the right talent, and make sure they can do all the great things that they're supposed to be doing. So at the end of the day, accessibility really is interwoven through our DNA and throughout all that we're doing at Verizon. So it's a lot of fun, a lot of work to still be done. We are continually every year to move that needle and really help to make a difference.
Yeah, and this panel that you're both on is the future of inclusive design. And this matters to, like you say, Fred, to everyone, right? It's about the customers, but it's about staff as well. You want to make sure that your workforce is as diverse as it can be, and that must include disabled people.
Yeah, and honestly, and that's what it all comes down to, right? We want to make sure everybody is aware. And I think part of, with Kate and Teach Access, that mission statement of letting people know about accessibility, teaching them about it. Why that's so important is, my conversations at Verizon used to be in the beginning of trying to explain what accessibility was and why it's important. Right. It's not just because there's a legal obligation, it's because it's the right thing to do. a lot of my conversations today, we're not talking about the why. It's more of the how. So you might have new employees coming in and we're training them, but for the most part, people understand why we're doing accessibility and why it's important versus to the beginning, right? We got to teach people from the ground up. And I think that's where your mission really comes into play to really help. And that's why I love to support it.
And Kate, from your perspective, I guess, you mentioned moving the needle. But I wonder, is it moving a needle or is it banging your head against a brick wall and hoping that brick starts to move at some point? Because, we all know, and I know in my world of blindness, having the challenge every day of dealing with people who just don't have a clue about disability, you're going into companies where you might think that there is more knowledge, but actually there might not be as much as there needs to be. So, where are you on this? Is it a needle or is it a brick wall?
Love this question. It probably depends on who we're talking to, of course. But really where we're spending, of course, as I said, we can't do this work without partnerships with organizations like Verizon and so many others. But where we spend most of our time is working within higher education. And so what we often find is, there might be faculty who are aware of these topics and are excited to get started. They just don't know what to do, kind of like Fred to say, I get it, but I don't know what that means for my teaching. That's a different conversation than approaching instructors or faculty who maybe have never heard of these terms before. And so whether it's a needle or a brick wall, we have different approaches to be able to engage with those faculty. But that's really the goal, is meeting faculty where they are and students as well. And what I've seen across the board as we are able to sort of make these entries into these spaces, educational spaces, our students are very eager to know about this. They get really excited to know that this is a field that maybe some of them want to have careers in, maybe some of them don't. But I really find that a lot of students are driven to do good. And so there's so many ways that, as they become designers, developers, etc., that they can do good. And this is one of those areas where so many of them get excited and think, oh my gosh, I can make a difference in what I'm doing no matter what type of job I have. And so it is moving the needle, I think, especially when it comes to students, because we usually don't have as much of a, as much of a challenge, if you will, to really get them to be excited about it and understand why they should be doing it.
This question is open to both of you, but Fred, I think from your perspective from the corporate side, from Verizon's perspective, it can be quite, you kind of picked up on it there, Kate. There is a fear, I guess, that lives within companies to admit they don't know something. And that can often be the barrier for lots of things, not just around disability or inclusion in that sense. It can affect lots of different areas. But it seems like Verizon has kind of accepted that fear and said, okay, let's work past that. Let's deal with it.
Absolutely. Listen, there's no playbook for accessibility. Let's be honest. I've been doing this. I've been fortunate. I've been doing this for 8 years. But I started from the ground up. And it was from talking to people like yourself, meeting with people, listening, bringing in people on my team. Some people have disabilities, some people don't. And just learning. And I will be the first one to say on a daily basis, ask me anything you like. If I know the answer, I'm going to give it to you. But here's the best part. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to be upfront and tell you, I don't know. But the good news is I have a whole network of people, whether it's in Verizon, it's partners like Teach Access, you name it, that I can go to get that answer. And then we can dissect it and understand what's the best way of approaching this. Because there's always a nuance every day. And that's a good thing. That helps the evolution of people being excited, wanting to learn more, and they want to solve.
But should there be a playbook? Should there be some kind of, basic, just, I guess not rules and regulation, but should there be some kind of baseline playbook?
I think it would help certain companies starting off because some people don't know where that starting point is. And that's a huge issue for a lot of people getting into the accessibility arena. They know they need to, they maybe not sure why they want to or why they have to, but they know they need to do it. So how do we kind of help them out there? And that's a lot of the conversations I have outside of Verizon with people is just to say, every organization is going to be different. Every approach needs to be different to tailor to your organization. But starting is the most important piece of this.
Yep.
And education awareness in my mind was one of my 3 focus areas I do at Verizon. So that's a core pillar for us, and we're, it's needed, and more information is needed to get out there. And I think the work that you guys do, again, bring out to students in higher education, that is starting that awareness part, but also the excitement.
Yep.
So
we're excited about it too. So here's a question for you. What is the future of inclusive design? How do you answer that question? What do you hope people get out of a panel like that when they leave?
For me, I mean, that's such a good question. Of course, it can't be solved in a single sentence, I would say. But for me, it's really being aware of who's at the table. And I mean that as a physical table and the metaphorical table. If you're sitting down to design something, if you're sitting down or standing to start creating a new product, a new service, taking a moment to look around and see who's in the room and who's not, I think is such a powerful way to start thinking about inclusive design and actually practicing it. If you're only surrounded by people that look like you or think like you, or have similar life experiences to you, you'll end up with a product that is suited for the people in the room. And so when we're thinking about creating inclusive products, who's at the table and who's not. And so I think for me, that's a big piece of it. Of course, it's not that simple that you just put everyone at the table and then magic happens, although that does often happen. But there's more to it from that point. But I just think as we're especially thinking about products from the standpoint of accessibility, if we don't have people with disabilities and people who are aware of accessibility at the table, it's always going to then be this afterthought add-on at the end. Whoops, we forgot about it. It's going to be expensive to do this. Let's just ship the product anyway. I mean, that we won't break that cycle, or that sort of cycle, I guess we could call it.
Yeah. And I'll dovetail off that, if you don't mind, because I think what's important is everything you said is absolutely 100% on point. The other piece of it is knowing the audience that you are working with. Because, again, people are going to be motivated for different reasons. As long as at the end of the day we are care for accessibility, I will tailor my conversation to that audience as long as I know that I'm going to be inclusive at the end. And so I like to talk to people about, okay, listen, let's be upfront. Let's look at your design ahead of time. Let's do this in real time so that if we need to tweak it, we can do that together. As we're going through development, let's talk about the WCAG guidelines. Let's make sure they're incorporated the right way. Let's do it up front, because there's a lot more power to get it done up front than retrofitting afterwards. But also the pride you're going to have to make sure that you've done everything possible to be as accessible as possible at launch. And, again, I think what people need to understand is this: when we're doing inclusive design, it's good for everybody. Right? That's number one. Number two, it's a legal thing. Number three, it's the right thing to do. Number four, you should be concerned about your brand. I want to work with brands that care about accessibility. That's not only for the individuals that are using assistive technology, but it's also for their family, their friends. I mean, people need to understand that this is a bigger world than just hearing, oh, it's accessibility, and they put it in a little box. It's much bigger than this little box called accessibility. It actually has an impact across everybody.
There's a huge discussion happening over here in Europe and across Europe about the carrot and the stick approach. Which one do you choose? And of course, you've picked up on it there a little bit, Fred, when you talk about the legal side of this, because for a lot of us in the disability community, we know that that brick wall has moved, that needle has moved, whatever it is, because of legislation, not necessarily because of the argument that it's the right thing to do. You're sometimes having to push the legislation to get that wall to move, and then people start to realize the value when they start to see the dollars coming in, right? When they start to see that their product is being purchased by or used by disabled people, then for some reason it clicks. Why is that?
I really don't know why that is. I mean, some people, again, there's a mindset, I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z and speed of market, get it out. They hear accessibility, they think, oh, it's going to slow down the process. Yeah. And the reality is it's not going to slow down the process. It's going to slow you down as an afterthought, that's for sure. But, I think that's where I'm excited, where I talk to different companies, like myself at Verizon, where, maybe 8 years ago, it was trying to tell people, hey, I need to be part of your project from day one and doing that education. Now I've got people coming to me with projects saying, hey, do you know about this project? We need your team to be part of it. Now, it's not perfect still, but the fact that people are coming to me versus me trying to find people, that shows the evolution. And if we start really sharing that message with other CEOs and other product designers and product owners, I think that's where we're going to see that difference. And then they're going to understand the value and the dollars are associated with the spending power of people with disabilities, their family, and their friends. It's just all tied together in the same ecosystem that we're all in.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to awareness, which of course is what our organization is really trying to do at Teach Access, is raise awareness across the spectrum of instructors and students. But generally speaking, I don't think that most people are trying to ignore things. They just don't know. They don't know that, if they haven't had a personal experience with disability or someone that they know, it's just not something in their mind. And so I feel like legislation is important for, some broad scale change. And if I can bring that example into sort of the higher ed space, what we see sometimes administration, and that could be everyone from the president and provost down to department chairs, faculty. For some, yes, they get on board right away. They're excited. Others aren't aware of it. And then we kind of do this bottom-up approach where we start talking to students. And often what we see on campuses is that students can impact change or affect change in maybe a speedier way than us trying to go, administrator by administrator. And so I think that kind of speaks to this idea of we need top-down and bottom-up and from all sides. And so there is a carrot, there is a stick, we need legislation, but we also need people who do it because they know, like Fred said, it's the right thing to do, and they're aware of it. So it really is sort of all of these things, I think. But a lot of it starts with just knowing that it's a thing, that we need to be aware of accessibility. We need to really include that in what we're doing.
I think you had a really good point. Some people just are not aware. And so I think it's our job as leaders in the space to provide that education and awareness. I know when I first started working with one developer, when I first started this, I was like, why are you just not helping and fixing? And that's when it dawned on me. He said to me, goes, I don't even know what accessibility is. And it's like, wow. And that was where the light bulb went off for me. And I said, okay, as we're creating our program, back to a playbook, right? So we're creating our program, education awareness had to be part of our playbook. Because I can't expect people to develop or design for something if they're not aware of it.
Right.
That's not fair to them either. I don't know why they're not aware of it, but again, you're not, that's fine. So let's do our part to make sure you have the right tools and the right education behind you to know why it's important and how to solve for it. And I think, that's part of...
Yeah, we can't all know everything, right? We can't know every single thing about everything. I don't know every experience of every other blind person in the world. I can't speak to that. I can speak about my experience, and I can't feel the need to kind of emote on other people's behalves for that. So we have to recognize that. And I think that's a really important step, isn't it? In having this conversation, it's just saying, let's just take the era of all of this, the hot era of this for a minute, and actually just have a conversation and ask questions. Like you said, Fred, earlier, you've got a team around you, ask questions, people around you can ask. It is so important because that is how you get past the stigma of all of this and you actually start to get meaningful change.
Kate, Fred, I'm going to leave you with one last question here, and I know that, there's always going to be room for improvement when it comes to disability and accessibility awareness globally. But as a human race, as the world, when you look at the global picture, do you find yourselves encouraged with the direction that things are going or discouraged?
What an easy softball last question you've given us. All of humanity. Let me think. No. When I'm looking at the work that I've done over my career in higher ed, and now here with Teach Access, I am encouraged. I really am. We've, by some counts, we've potentially reached up to 450,000 students since we began our work. Of course, there's many more students and a lot more work to go. But that also, or it doesn't include, I should say, all the faculty and instructors that we've brought into this work and are now teaching every semester, every quarter to their students about these topics. And I feel this is my third time attending CES. I kind of have come every other year, it feels like. And this is the year where I feel like I'm seeing accessibility in more than just the couple booths that, are labeled the accessibility space. That's labeled the accessibility space. And so, yesterday I attended the keynote with L'Oreal, and they did several minutes talking about the accessible products, adaptive products that they have. In big letters, accessibility was on the main stage, you know. And so I do feel encouraged. There's certainly still a lot of work to be done, absolutely. But I do feel encouraged that it seems like there's more people talking about it and aware of it than I've seen at previous CES events, as well as just in general, my day-to-day. So I'm encouraged. Fred?
I listen, I'm an optimist at heart, just to be honest with you, and I am very encouraged. I have seen, again, since I've been doing this for the last 8 years, where I started to where I'm at today, I never would have thought I would have been where I'm at today. And what I'm saying about me, it's because of the diversity of my team, the growth of my team, the investments I continue to see not only Verizon making, but other partners making, because they all know that it's really, really important. The conversation is definitely much different 8 years later than it was. And by default, that excites me. Knowing that we have a whole year ahead of us with a whole new chapter to write. And I just know it's going to be amazing. So I am definitely encouraged. I think there's a lot of good people out there that they finally have learned about accessibility and they're like, this just makes sense. Yes, let's do it. So again, I'm an optimist. I really think we're in the right direction.
Kate, Fred, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. You both have a standing invitation to join us anytime you want to talk. This has been a great conversation, and it will continue for a long time to come, so we all have jobs.
Really appreciate it. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching this exclusive Access Tech Live video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like it, and join us for another one on our YouTube channel.